Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. We're on another episode of Iron Radio. I'm Phil Stevens. I am a strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, and youth football coach.
Nice. This is Dr. Mike Nelson, winner of the Flex Diet certification, which opens again June 17th. Associate professor at the Carrick Institute, and we'll be at ISSN coming up very soon. And Alani will be there also. So if you want to learn all about supplements, come on down to Florida.
Coach Durrell out of Strength Guild in Kansas City. I am a gym owner, weightlifting coach, and just a general strength and conditioning coach.
Cool. And this is Lonnie Lowry. I am a professor, 25 years, former competitive bodybuilder, food industry and academic consultant. In fact, got some good news along those lines recently. I'm not sure I can say anything about it, so I shouldn't have brought it up. but yeah, there's some good stuff going on there. Honestly, Mike, you and I will, I'm sure, talk about this down in Florida, but man, the exercise physiology world and universities in general are going to undergo huge changes in the next 5 years, like between AI. And our field isn't licensed. We've all talked about this 100 times, right? We're a wild west of hundreds of certifications. Yes, there are some handful of good ones, but it creates a lot of confusion. And when you're working with state officials and stuff like that, you're trying to explain to them why some people think exercise physiology is healthcare, and other people say, no, it's not, because it's not licensed to practice, and. So anyway, yeah, we're going to see big changes, especially in Ohio. I mean, there's reportedly 51 small private universities fighting for a shrinking student base. When I first started teaching at small privates, I had 40 kids in the class. By the time the pandemic rolled around, I had single digits. It's not good.
Yeah.
And so everybody's scrambling, and I think we're going to have to start to coordinate. Either state governments, or someone is going to have to say, okay, what schools in the state are good at chemistry? You guys get the chemistry majors, especially because so many things are online. Who's good at religious studies? Who's good at graphic design? And instead of fighting for, there's not enough students. But yeah, relative to our field, it really underscores to me how most other professions, and I think we all know this, they've actually piecemealed exercise physiology to be part of their profession. It's too late for us to come to the table and say, we want licensure. That's what we do. And yet the NSCA and the ACSM in the next 5-6 years, the new business is not marketing straight to the strength coaches or to the fitness pros. It's the universities. They want universities to pay them so they have an accredited program. Otherwise, you're no good because you're not accredited. So you need this third-party commercial, in my opinion, stamp of approval, or you're not legitimate. And I'm like, what's wrong with having a master's degree? A master's degree is a freaking advanced degree. That should have value quite regardless of the ACSM or the NSCA. Yeah. I guess I'm old because nobody else seems to really think that, but I've been sticking to my guns about that.
Same thing. I've had people who are like, they found out I was finishing an advanced degree. I was finishing my PhD in exercise physiology. And the one girl goes, well, what certifications do you have? And I said, I did a NSCA CSCS. She's like, that's so amazing. You're certified. I'm like, you've heard of the NSCA? She's like, no, never heard of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I repeatedly had people.
Like, this is the perception? Oh, my God.
Yeah, they're told you're overqualified and undercertified. And it's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yeah. So you want a piece of paper over experience and success with your clients or your athletes? What? Like, who wouldn't choose the proof in the pudding, Like successful clients. I don't know. We'll see where some of this stuff goes. My fingers are crossed. I'm trying to be hopeful, but I do feel like, degrees have been devaluated. Yeah. Okay. So, super listener Dave Fryers sent in something about coffee. This is breaking coffee news. It's not directly related to lifting, but it is in the fact that so many of us drink coffee and, use caffeine. And
Strength and muscle sport news.
the title of this one, this is a bit more of not quasi-lay reporting, but it says, like drinking a music festival, this is ultrasonic coffee. But does it taste any good? I find that title a little confusing. If it's a music festival, why are you questioning if it tastes any good? But it says Australian scientists have developed a method of brewing coffee by blasting ground beans with sound waves, and it produces a powerful cup. It says, I'm looking at a coffee that's thick, cold, and deep brown color of dark chocolate. It tastes like coffee, but weirdly without any bitterness. It's the only coffee I've had that was made by blasting the ground coffee beans with sound. They call it ultrasonic coffee. It wasn't made by a barista, but by two chemical engineers at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. So just digging a little bit further, I pulled up the link that Dave sent as well. Let me see if I can do this. It's in the journal Ultrasonics Sonochemistry. So pretty esoteric, but yeah, it gets engineering pretty fast here, so I'm glad Mike's on board. Coffee brewing sonoreactor for reducing the time of cold brew from several hours to minutes while maintaining sensory attributes. And a lot of people know with the flavor wheel and everything else. I mean, coffee is how I got into the whole sensory science thing. People can get a PhD, talk about advanced degrees. There are books 4 inches thick on sensory science, and it's a lot of equations and stuff that you wouldn't expect. But this paper was by Chiu and colleagues. The senior author is this Trujillo, Francisco Trujillo, I think you pronounce that. It says highlights. The sonoreactor reduced the cold brew time from 24 hours to less than 3 minutes. Vibrations through the wall of the sonoreactor generate multiple cavitation zones. So again, these little like vacuoles, bubbles, if you will, and when they collapse, it creates a mini shock wave. It breaks up the bean like never before, I guess. Acoustic cavitation significantly increased the extraction yield, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Decreasing the basket loading percentage increased the extraction yield, and it produces coffee with sensory qualities similar to that of 24-hour cold brew. A lot of people know cold brew's getting super popular. It's been super popular because it's less bitter. The stuff that you're extracting by not going to high temperatures, you're getting different chemicals out of those crushed beans, right? It said sonicating doubled the extraction yield and caffeine concentration. Also, the total fatty acids increased. So, and I won't give you all the numbers because people don't really care specifically about percentages and that kind of thing. But I look for this to change, knowing what happened to the K-Cup movement and everybody. We were talking about this before we hit the record button, but that exploded. And so if they can make these machines cheaply, I'd say in the next, year or two, watch for these little coffee machines that just crush the beans. It's the way that they infuse the water and crush up everything. And, but if the extractions are fast and they're good, I actually don't mind a little bitterness in my coffee. But, if it's going to really extract all the stuff and you have less in the grounds that you toss away, and we shouldn't be tossing away those grounds anyway, in my opinion, but yeah, it's just kind of a coffee science thing. So watch for that coming down the pike, something that's going to make super strong coffee. Imagine doing that, like stacking that with beans that are like the Death Wish coffee beans, robust beans or something like Yupi. Wee! Ooh!
Yeah.
So, yeah, coffee science moving on.
Yeah, about a year ago, I started just cold brewing everything, and then I heat it up. So every morning I pour some in a pot and make it warm and then drink it. And I started it because just for ease, it's done. All I have to do is heat it up.
Totally.
And so I have a gallon container that I just keep full, and then every morning heat up a cup, and I'm good to go.
But, very similar here. I've been getting that Stoke coffee. You could get lightly sweetened, and then I'll mix it with just plain coffee. Anyway, the point is, my son was like, well, that's cold brew. Are you heating that up in the microwave, Dad? I'm like, yeah, coffee's a hot beverage. I don't know. I know coffee's a hot beverage.
Yep.
But, yeah, similar.
Yeah, and they should be able to do that at a relatively lower price point. I mean, obviously there's different grades of it. When I worked for a medical device company when we were doing like prototypes for stents. We use a lot of ultrasonic cleaning as part of the different, process. So I worked in a lab where we were making just one-off prototypes for mechanical testing. And then they have like ultrasonic jewelry cleaners and things like that are, different quality, obviously, but I don't think they're crazy expensive anymore. So in theory, they should be able to make something at a, pretty decent price point too. So it would not be prohibitively expensive, I don't think.
Well, that's going to be key, because like I am not willing to buy some of these like $400 or $500 fancy coffee makers. It's like,
there's ones way more than that.
Oh, I know. No, I hear you. I went to the coffee festival in New York, and I was looking at some of these things from the big brands, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, especially if you want to start leaning to these quasi commercial level things, like. Wow. They look cool, and I wouldn't mind having one, but I'm too cheap. Yeah. I'm just too cheap. Yeah. I started going down this rabbit hole of fluid dynamics, and I'm almost like, I'll talk to Mike about this, because like if you went under the power of some of these, the way that these vacuoles or bubbles form and their power, like they were showing pictures of like propellers on boats and stuff, and how just the bubbles that are formed, it'll chew it away. It looks like it's eaten away, like damage. So yeah, it's a powerful technique. So we'll see where this goes. To me, it's does it taste good? Is it affordable? I might try it. I'm a coffee nerd, but yeah, it's going to have to be, to Mike's point, within a certain price range. I'm not going to spend. This sounds really cheap, but I'm probably not going to spend more than $100 on a coffee pot.
I'll just put a pair of headphones on my gallon jug and turn up the flare and see what comes out.
Slate coffee.
Metal infused coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's metal.
I mean, the increase in caffeine is exciting, as I always tell my baristas. I'm here for the drugs. I mean, the taste is a bonus. But
no.
But that'll be interesting. That first prototype is going to be expensive no matter what. You got to get when you get that first brand, the new branding, or new marketing language, it's going to be, the new thing, and then cheaper for.
The industry will mature, and then but we'll see. I mean, if it takes off, if this is a music festival in your mouth, like the one article was saying, okay, well then.
I don't know if I want that.
Let's see. Because I'm looking to go to that music festival if the ticket prices are affordable. So
that's not dirt on the ground.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this stuff might be very unusual. I mean, they say the sensory attributes are very similar to cold brew. Okay. You can also just make cold brew. I mean, at home. Mm-hmm. Commercially, I can see how this could save a lot of money, right? Instead of having this huge stainless steel vat, and you're paying some kid to kind of keep an eye on the temperature, and you got to hold it for 18 hours while it brews, and then after it's done, you can only keep it for so long. If you can make it 3 minutes and get the same kind of deal, or even better extraction, let's face it, the lipids in there are important too. That crema and all the stuff that goes with it. To Jarrell's point, right? You want it to actually taste good as bonus. So. That's all I've got. Is there any other news in the fitness world?
No, not worth mentioning. Not that I've seen. I kind of perused the news, and there's like, somebody benched 225 and stuff like that. Nothing groundbreaking. So
right. Yeah.
We'll take a short break, and then I'll come back with a topic we can chew on. So.
Hey everybody, Iron Radio is back, and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network, as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Okay, everybody, we're back. And what we're going to talk about today, basically, I went to a month ago when I had my Highland Games. We talked about it on the show. I've had some issues since the day after. So since the day after that, my glute's been killing me, and it's when I walk long distance, or oddly enough, when I lay in bed. is the worst. Now I go squat and it goes away. So I finally, I was just like, let's rest it. Let's go light duty. I took a week and a half off and then went back to light. And then when I started squatting again, oddly enough, I was like, oh, it feels better to a point. And then one thing I noticed this week, it was earlier on Wednesday, was anytime I get over 455 on squat, I lost feeling in my left leg. And I almost took my squat again this week. I was like, I walked out, my training partners look at me like, you had a weird look on your face. And I was like, yeah, I can't feel my fucking leg. And, and let me tell you, it's hard to squat when you can't feel it. And it's kind of sketchy. And I decided to rack it. I just didn't take it. And I finally called my chiro. I was like, I need in. And I've got a great chiropractor. He's one of the ones that, like, I go in there and he doesn't crack me. He's like, okay, what's the issue? And I'll crack you if I have to and things like that. And he's also one of those guys that, generally you go to a chiropractor, they'll crack some things and they're like, okay, I need you to sign up for 6 months of this and blah, blah. He's like, no, if I can't fix you in 3 sessions, I'm sending you somewhere else, type of guys. Anyways, we get to talking. He's like, I'm not going to do anything. He's like, I'm pretty sure. He's like 95% sure that I have a micro tear in one of my discs from the Highland Games. He said, it's all that twisting motion. And, he said, everything you're telling me, that's what it sounds like. He said, I can go in there and manipulate things and stuff like that, but he said it might do more harm than good. So he just wants me to rest. So basically he assigned me rest. And this is the topic I'm getting to. And rest for me is nothing over 225. Is putting me basically on bed rest. And it just got me thinking, it's just revalidates like what we've talked about. And it's like, one thing that keeps me going is knowing that, like, even at my worst, I'm better than you at your best. And it's had these, like Jim Windler, when he got hit people don't know. Jim was at a death metal fest in Maryland. He was driving back on his chopper and some kid on his cell phone hit him at 65 miles an hour. And, it was a yard sale off his chopper. And basically the doctor told him, if you weren't who you are and built how you are, you'd be dead. Basically his muscle mass saved him from having a broken back and everything else. It held you together. He was still fucked up, but, it was all pretty much superficial stuff like skin and things like that that'll heal fairly easily. And, it just got me thinking. It's like, man, and that's really when we look at it, especially now that I age, and it's like, I'm not just concentrated on what's on the bar. I want to live long and be active. Like I look at 70 and 80-year-olds and it's like, I want to be one of those ones that are still doing things. And like we talked about before the show, I think a big issue is people that get into this fitness realm, you get into a social media bubble of you're always comparing yourself to, of course, usually the tops in whatever field you're pursuing. And it gives us a jaded perspective, and we never step back and look at ourselves in a broader spectrum of like, well, how do I stack up compared to the world? And that's a big one that keeps me going now, because I'm not chasing the 800-pound deadlift as much. I'm not chasing, I'm not constantly chasing numbers on the bar comparatively to the rest of the people doing that in the world. And it's healthy to take a step back and like, well, how do I stack up against the world? And just like I said, when me being able to like, okay, you're on rest, don't squat more than 225. And it's like, okay, I'll go and do a bunch of sets of 20. But, and like I said, the other day, Thursday, I had a girl come in that, she came in for her first session. She's 14. And I was like, okay, how are your pull-ups? She's like, oh, I can do one. And she knocked out one. And she was amazed that I was amazed. And just telling her that, like, you realize you're, like, probably in the top 1% of girls your age, especially nowadays. I mean, even in the history of things, though, like, I've had damn near every woman client I've had, like, one of their goals is the ability to put their chin over a bar before they're done. That's a big goal for females, and it's an admirable goal. They don't have the upper body strength that we have. They're just not born with it. And her having the ability to do that right away, she was like upset that she could only do one. And I was like, no, that's good. Let's just do lots of sets of one. That's how we get to 2 and 3. And I don't know. I mean, I just want to kind of chomp the bit on that. It's like we need at times to have a broader perspective. Now, I love having the advent of social media can be good too, and because it connects us as niche communities. Like nowadays we can easily measure ourselves against the best because they're out there in our face screaming. But you've got to keep perspective, on the greater, population and where you actually stand. Because, I mean, let's be honest, only 0.0001% of us are going to be Ed Cohn.
Yeah.
Got to be genetically superior and just have, you got to have the right parents, the right environment, the right this, the right that. We're all not meant to be Olympians, but that doesn't mean you're failing. And a lot of people end up taking this so serious. They go down that rabbit hole of social media. I fucking suck. I only squat 700. And it's like, dude, you're a beast. It's like, we're not all meant to be Michael Jordan.
Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say, what an unbelievable experience to be bigger and stronger than everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what you are. If you're in a strength sport of almost any kind, you're almost definitely bigger and stronger than everybody else. And that's just super empowering. And even to your point about structural integrity, being heavily built has a lot of perks, man.
Well, yeah. And that's part of what keeps me the likelihood of somebody when they age, breaking a hip and from falling down and things like that. It's that's a lot of what we're fighting too as we get older. And I've seen my mindset change in my 40s. Now late 40s. It's that's a lot of what I'm training for. It's okay, I'm going to keep training because I want bone density. I don't want to be that dude that steps off a curb and breaks a femur, and things like that. And it's
per our conversation last week, it's also getting worse in terms of just the overall average.
Oh yeah, no, it is, and it's worse across ages. Last episode, we were more talking about the young people coming up, but I mean, it's definitely gotten worse with the aged population. I mean,
oh man, this reminds me of a story when I was teaching in a dietetics department. First of all, they have a very different mindset. A lot of dietetics faculty, they don't look as good, in my opinion, at a glance. They don't look as strong and healthy as an ex-phys faculty would, It's really kind of a weird commentary about if you over-focus on diet versus exercise. Exercise is such a potent stimulus. But to your point, one of them, I think mid-50s, her husband pulled a canoe out of a lake and broke his back in 3 places. And I'm like, frail.
Yeah.
I never want you guys to say that about me, ever. I pulled a freaking little canoe out of water. I shattered my back. That is just frail. I know that's judgmental, but oh my God.
No, listen, I was just laughing at the way you said that.
But didn't we talk about being motivated by negative motivation we talked about several weeks ago, oh my God, I'm going to fight hard because that's never going to be me.
Yeah.
I guess I have a question about this, just culturally with the kind of the pressure of fat loss, weight loss versus muscle gain. I think I don't know how it is where you guys are at, but I think building muscle is down right now, down-ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was up for a little bit, early 2000s, it was starting to, come, and then I think it just kind of dropped off a little bit. But the long-term shift from being under-muscled versus over-fat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, when they come in, it starts out, the fat loss, but once they kind of get into the real world, with some strength, they realize, oh no, the muscle is the thing. That's the thing I want to prioritize. It takes time, but
yeah, we had a minute there for sure where what you can do became more important than how you look, and that has shifted already. And it goes in ebbs and flows, of course, but wherever popular weightlifting or, fitness realm tends to. But yeah, for a minute there, we were definitely in the an athletic mindset with everybody. And that seemed to shift a bit recently. But yeah, for me, it's just, like you said, with the nutrition aspect is the magic happens when those two worlds combine. And the problem is people usually get singularly focused on one of them, either nutrition or physical activity. And they don't realize that, like, if you lack one of those, like, you're not getting the results you can get. And the weird thing is at a young age, with young athletes, like, my big thing with nutrition is usually just fucking eat. Just eat more. Yeah. And, like, we don't worry about it. But then it's as we age, like, definitely for me, like, getting into my 40s, something happened. And it's like, oh, if I eat like I did when I was 25 to 35, despite training like I did when I was 25 to 35, the results are different.
Yeah. And, you're lucky in that at least you could keep up your frequency, because my joints are so shot now. I was thinking about that. Like, I'd love to ask you guys, like, as you age, what would be your advice to try to keep the frequency up? Because to your point about losing feeling in your leg, like, if I go over 60 pounds in with dumbbell presses, I know it's not a big deal, but because I have to maintain some minimum of functionality, and my arms will go numb, like at night or when I'm driving. I'm like, this is not good. I don't brachial plexus. I don't know what is it. Something cervical. I don't know, but it's not good. But for me, it's actually hard to keep up the same volume, sets times reps kind of deal. That let me earn all those carbs. So, I have poorer carb tolerance because I'm old. Yes. And the glycogen economy is just not what it used to be. I'm not burning through what I used to, it just makes it hard to try to just, fight that long defeat, I guess.
Yeah. And I think the vast majority of that, and I deal with it myself, is in your head. It's getting okay with, like, I have to go in and I have to squat weights that used to be easy and be okay with it. Like, not let it beat you up mentally. And that's the biggest lesson I had to learn as I age, is like, just do something. Like, okay, that will hurt, so I won't do that. I'm going to do this. Whereas a lot of people just walk away. Like, especially people that were in the iron game a long time. And yeah, it's hard. It'd be just like a freaking professional athlete trying to step on the field again 20 years after they were their best. A lot of them just don't do it. Like, I'm done. I just won't do it because I can't do it at the level I did it. And then you start that downward spiral.
It is a spiral. Like, there's no doubt.
If I can't do it, I just won't. If I can't do it how I should be able to do it, I just won't do it at all. And it's the wrong, like for me, it's like, okay, like, I could be totally upset about being relegated to squatting 225 instead of 550. But I'm like, man, I'm still doing it, And it's realizing the benefit of that lighter amount. It's like, okay, I could just say, fuck it, I'm not going at all, and I'm going to sit on my couch and turn into a gelatinous blob. Or I can go ahead and do the 225 and still, and know. The other thing that you have to realize is, like, I know by me going in and squatting 225, I'm going to preserve most of what I can do.
It's true.
Just by doing that. It doesn't, and like Dave and Jim have talked about a lot, like, gaining strength, gaining muscle is hard. You have to
maintaining
it. Maintaining it is not as hard. You can do a small percentage and still maintain.
Very
the
true.
Stimulus to maintain it is much less than the stimulus to gain it. As we age. But,
case in point, before in the months leading up to my ankle reconstruction, I wasn't using any weights to speak of. Like, like you were saying, like 2.25 on a Smith squat kind of deal, or, leg presses with 3 or 4 plates. Not like just getting in the contractions, really. And my legs, they weren't like they used to be, but, they were bigger than most people's. And then when I did straight bed rest, being 55 years old, oh my God, the atrophy. Because to your point, it's like proof in the pudding, right? Like, you take away that minor stimulus, even though it feels minor to you, it's doing wonders to keep you at a certain level. Because when you remove the stimulus entirely, and this goes back to what you're saying to exphys and nutrition, of course they work together. I mean, that's why I did both in school, right? Because Exercise is the stimulus, and the food is the building blocks and the fuel. You can't have just a stimulus with no building blocks, right? And you can't have just building blocks with no stimulus. Mm-hmm. So it's two sides of the same coin to me. I think we make a mistake oftentimes in this country by trying to separate them as different professions. But the truth is, a lot of fitness professionals handle a fair amount of nutrition advice until the dietitians get too salty with them. Mm-hmm. And they can do a pretty damn good job with healthy people as well in that. So
it's if you look at the average, like we all seen the graphs of, hey, here's sarcopenia, here's muscle loss on average over time, and it kind of sort of looks like a linear thing. There's a little bit more of a steep, kind of drop off towards the end. But if you look at it on an individual basis, it's not really a linear function for vast majority of people at all. It's, you fell and broke your hip, and so now you're on bed rest or limited movement, or you got an injury, or you got a respiratory illness, or it's actually a step function where you're doing good, and then, now you're on bed rest for 2 weeks, and then you lose a massive amount of muscle because you can't do anything during that period of time. And then, you can still recover it, but how much time do you have to recover it before you get hit with something else?
Yeah.
And so I think the more I keep thinking about it, Peter T has talked about this. Luke Van Loon had a really great interview where he talked a lot about this because he's done a lot of those studies where they've put casts on young, healthy people, and they've lost, like 30% of their muscle mass in 2 weeks. And just that there's a huge difference between just walking around doing light loads and being on bed rest and doing like nothing.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more if you can avoid those periods of just extreme inactivity, I think that's going to go a long ways and probably farther than what most people realize.
Yeah, no, that's where I was going to hit. It was like, if you want the easiest way to get an eye on this is put a cast on something.
Oh, yeah.
Put a cast on something for 4 weeks and take it off. And shocking. I remember when I blew my first bicep and I came out and my upper arm was the size of my wrist. I'm like, oh my God, it's only been 5 weeks. Where did it go? And that's the complete rest. And that's where, like, as athletic trainers or whatnot, and like, we're not lying when we talk to people, like, literally fucking do something.
Yeah.
Like, just walk, locomote yourself. And people get, well, I can't do that, so I just won't do anything. And it's like, you are starting an ugly spiral that you don't want to get a hold of. No. And they don't realize that how bad a little bit of something or how bad nothing is compared to just a little bit of something.
Right. Like,
just a little bit of something can massively change things.
All of us agree, I'm sure. Yeah. Like, I've been having that conversation with my mom. It's like, keep walking, Mom. Just go keep walking. I mean, she's a little 83-year-old, 4'11" person. You got to keep moving. Just keep moving because it really is use it or lose it. It's the overload principle and the reversibility principle. These are known, like, textbook things in our field, Yeah.
And that's, that again, we'll go back to societal changes. Today's society has lent itself to people being slugs. Like, they have the ability to keep living and, like, literally live in their recliner.
Yeah, it's Wall-E.
Like, it is. That's what, you don't have to go to the grocery store now. Like, if you need food, you can just go on the internet and it'll show up at your door. The ability for humans to be totally inactive in today's age, you can do it, and that's new. Like, if you didn't get your ass up and go to the store, you'd die. You would sit in your home, and you're an 80-year-old lady, and nobody checks on you, and you no longer exist. That the ability to do that now is inhibited. So, and that could be good and could be bad. Yeah, for the right person, it's okay. I don't need to go to the grocery store. I can get my training session in. They'll bring it to me, but that's not happening. They're not using these things to allow themselves more time for educating their physical side of their body. They're spending it looking at more YouTube videos and TikToks.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you said, Phil, about like society is built to have either hyper awesome athletes or total beanbag chairs of a human being.
Yeah.
And there's not much in between. You have to actually adopt this like full on, all in lifestyle, or you don't even have to go walk around the grocery store anymore. To your point.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's this weird bimodal distribution we have now where Mike and I were going to go down to ISSN and everybody down there is going to be 90th percentile, or better for pick your physical characteristic. Yeah, and then you step 1 foot outside of the conference hotel.
Yeah.
And with like a third of everybody, at least probably these days, I'd love to see the actual latest numbers on sedentary people that are full on zero exercise, no purposeful movement. It's usually hovered around a third, if I remember right. I got to think it's just going to get worse and worse. Again, like the Wall-E effect, like Mike was saying.
Yeah, and then like the tough part is like for me and like you, when you talked about it, when you were in your mid 40s, the last time you competed, you went ahead and did open, and you did well. And like I'm telling you, like keep an eye on the vast population, the average, and keep a measuring stick there. But like you, like I've always entered open, even in my late 40s.
Right, even when you're older.
And that's because I don't want to be measured against the average. The average sucks so much. I don't want that scale. I don't want that. Like I don't want to be compared to you. You're horrible. You know? And parts of me always wants to be like, okay, I'm going to enter open. I'm going to get my ass kicked. But if I take third, I'm fucking stoked, because I'm old, and it's like I want to still be measured against the best. And that's like I've always talked about when I first started powerlifting, and I would always enter that when I first started is like shortly after that is when like 100% raw and things like that came to life. And I was like, okay, I could enter that meet, but I always wanted to be measured against the best, so I'm going to go compete against the multiply guys that are on everything.
Right.
I won't win, but it's like I'm stepping on that platform with the best, and I'm not looking like an asshole.
No, just be competitive.
Yeah, if I'm competitive against that group, then I'm good,
Well, and
it's okay.
Hell yeah. In the rest of your life, you're more than good. You're a freaking superhero.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's like, but don't lose the fact of, I don't know, what I'm trying to say is like, keep the averages in mind and as part of your measuring stick, not your only one. But when you start getting down, it's be like, man, I'm still better than you. Like you have to keep that there or you'll just go insane. And that's like people that like they go overboard on measuring everything. Like I'm going to measure every rep and every ounce of this and that. And it's like to the point that gets bad,
Yeah.
And
you got those wearables on, and it's like I'm tracking my sleep, I'm tracking my steps, I'm tracking.
And then you're spending so much time tracking that you're not doing things, and and you're mentally just beating yourself up because you're not perfect in every realm. Like, oh, I needed 15 more minutes of sleep. What am I going to do? Shut up and train.
Well, to be fair,
yeah,
I mean, I know, right. I know that tracking stuff, I mean, it's really hard to control what you don't measure, but you're right. We live in an age where there are so many wearables, and the average person, unless they've got some guidance, you could end up in the minutia where you actually need more stimulus. Like you have to actually eat heavier and lift heavier.
Yes.
And you can't forget those are just the basics, man.
Do you guys have anything modality-wise, exercise-wise, or anything in between that you guys include or make sure you include in your training that keeps you in the game? Barring any like actual like acute injury thing, but stuff that you do. I mean, for me, just as an example, something I always find is when I start dropping kettlebell swings. Like kettlebell swings, like just keep me in it, whatever it is. Like kettlebell swings just help me with everything. It's like a ground zero for me. Is there anything you guys use that like keeps you in the game? Things that you find that if you drop them out, they just cause problems for whatever reason?
Well, kettlebell swings are big. The big one for me is not any move in itself. I'd say the big, and I'm fortunate that I've been injured since I was 7. And I say I'm fortunate at that is because from an early age, from when I started getting big into fitness, I've had to have a plan B. And I think more people need that. Like they have their workout. Like Mike sends me a workout. Today I can't do that workout because of something. And they don't have a plan B already in mind. So they just don't do anything. Like I think everybody needs to have if shit's not going right, I'm going to abort that and do this. Like, and that's what we go back to is like, it's the realization that something is better than nothing. Now, are there days where it's best just to fucking put the bar back in the rack and leave? Yes, there are. But those days are actually few. You can do something to, hey, this hurts today. I'm going to do something to fix that, type of thing instead of just leaving. So my advice is be like, no matter who you are, always have a plan B in mind and don't be afraid to abort plan A and go to plan B just to get something in.
Yeah, even if it's a walk, a hike, Yeah,
especially long term. Like if it's a reoccurring issue, you can't just keep walking away and doing nothing, or you're going to go down that spiral. Like find something. Okay, I can't squat today. Like I couldn't squat the other day with my training partner, so I got on the leg press or the leg extension, leg curl machine, and did some kettlebell swings. It's like I'm going to do something that doesn't cause a negative reaction. Like this doesn't hurt at all. I'm going to do it, and it's a tenth of what I'm able to do, but I know that just doing that is better than nothing.
Yeah, I think most of our listeners already know a lot of this stuff. I think we take for granted. Like I've had back in the day as an undergrad, I had a class called Adapted PE. And the whole point was, for people that have different, you can call it handicap, whatever you want to call it. How do you get them active? So we have all of us like, well, my ankle hurts when I was squatting. So I'll leg press, or I went too heavy on the leg press. I'll do a different kind of leg press, or I'll do, you know what I mean? There's 100 different things you can do with resistance training that probably won't hurt. Like I think about the Arnold press when his shoulders hurt. He would just, supinate and pronate and lift the dumbbells from the front of his delts instead of off to the side. And there's just so many things that you can do. And I guess if there's anybody who's listening who doesn't know any better, ask, or Google around. You're going to find some good alternatives, right? Some kind of info, because it is remarkable. And the hopeful thing of all this message, because, lately I've been really like tidal wave. Like I watch people jogging and I'm like, I can't do that anymore. Like because of my ankle or my whatever. Now I was never a big fan of running anyway. I'd rather walk briskly and hike and stuff. Yeah. And I'm grateful I can still do, but you understand, like jealous, like, oh my God, I can't even do that anymore. Yeah. Like I'm not going to run anymore. Yeah. Between my blown out left knee and my rebuilt ankle and all this kind of stuff. And, but something, I have a repertoire, and I don't want to forget that I do have this repertoire of what else I can do. That's good advice, because it doesn't take much. That is the hopeful message. It actually doesn't take much to maintain, but if you lose it all, man, to my how long is that going to take to claw back? Yeah. If at all, right?
And that's the tough part. Age. Because, at a certain age, you're just not getting back. I mean, because you're already fighting that fight. Like the vast majority of us on this show here we're fighting that good fight to not go backwards. And, we're passing that age where it's like, oh, easy progress. Like we expect progress. The good thing is like we're seeing it in the PT world too. Like there's a backlash against but the industry's changed from complete rest, even in the PT world. Like they're much more aggressive, which is good, which is, and that's led to good things. Like when I got my hip replacement, it's like, okay, you're awake, get up. Like the minute I was lucid, they're putting me up on my feet on this brand new titanium piece that's been in me for 4 hours. And, so that's a good thing, is like we're seeing less total rest prescribed by medical professionals, because they've began to realize like, oh, that's bad. We intubate you for 2 weeks. Whoo, we're in trouble. And your internal organs are no different than, not vastly different than just skeletal muscle. You make them not do their job, they forget how to do their job. So,
it's a dynamic machine. Mike and I have talked about that before. It's not like a car engine, right? Yeah. No. Everything is, it's like a stream. You can never step into the same stream twice, because of the basic idea of physiologic flux. Like there's inputs and outputs, and, you're always either going up or down. Even people who think they're steady, and for most purposes they are, but they still got the stimulus of gravity. my interest in space flight lately, I really think it's the new field for ex-phys and nutrition. Like, how do you prevent the massive muscle and bone loss? Because what it is, it's a complete lack of stimulus. It's anti-weight training, right? Instead of more stimulus, it's less. And to your point about like wearing a cast, watch people just waste away. Mm-hmm. It's a clear indication that we need that gravity stimulus, or we're just eventually you're going to die. So it's not good.
Yeah, I've kind of, even with myself, and I've been trying this with clients too, changed the question to that you will now do something every day. Now that something maybe take a dedicated walk, do some like cardio, whatever. Like, I'm not saying not have any days off and just try harder, because that's not so good. But you have to be intentional about what you're doing. So for a lot of clients, if I'm programming, to me, like Sunday is what I call like just an unload day. Like no lifting, maybe no cardio, just take a long walk, do your food prep. And part of that is I want to see how their system responds to, no loading from all the stress they've accumulated over the week and everything else. But they're still doing something intentional, like it's done with intention, because I think that forces you to figure out what are my options versus my option of doing fuck all nothing, right? Because that forces you to get to option 2, 3, 4. Normally I would say like, try 3 to 4 things. And if those 3 to 4 things, if none of that works, then you can leave the gym. But most of the time there's something you can do. I mean, I still write all my little workouts on paper. I can't remember the last time in this entire year I've done everything exactly to how I wrote it down. It just doesn't happen. But if I'm making progress, doing more volume, doing more intensity, I'm good overall. And then the other things I've noticed that have helped, at least me personally, a lot, especially as I get older, some type of functional neurology stuff, because of some of the eye stuff I have. So there's always some neurology drills from my neurologist that I'm working on. RPR, reflexive performance reset. It looks batshit crazy, but I don't know, man. The longer I've been doing it and doing it on other people, it just seems to work and definitely seems to decrease joint pain, and function seems to go up. And then I do think adding more cardio aerobic type work, especially as people are older. I do like the rower for that because it's mostly concentric. You can still do speed and power work. You can still do continuous work. You don't have any of the pounding. You get a little bit more upper back work, lower leg work. So if I had to pick one piece of equipment, I would pick that one. And from a programming standpoint, I always get output from it. So I always know where people are at. And again, not that every session has to be heroic, but you can track then, are you getting better over time quite easily, because it just literally gives you the data. You don't need to do anything else to get it.
Mike, can I ask you, and I'm interested in what Jarrell has seen as well. Have you seen examples, like I told you, the poor, fragile, glass bones dude who shattered his spine pulling a boat out of a lake? Have you seen that kind of stuff before? Or like the opposite, where people were so heavily built, they walked away from something that was remarkable?
Oh, yeah. Like on the intake form, I'll ask them, like, what were your injuries? And usually people who are more active, it's like, oh, yeah, I got, thrown off wakeboarding, or I hit a tree on my mountain bike or whatever. And it's usually some more minor-ish injury. But to me, like, the red flags are, I was walking across the street and I fell and broke my hip, or, I got out of the car, or like some very minimal impact thing and something horrendous happened. To me, that's like red flags going up everywhere of like, oh shit, we got to be really cautious with loading this person, because they're like a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen quite a bit of that, and it's not necessarily age dependent either, but anyone above 25, and like intro workouts, which, I mean, I used to, like, so when I ran the CrossFit gym, it used to just be like, we'd teach a squat and then do like maybe a 5 to 8 minute thing of, that same movement, like a goblet squat and like burpees or something like that. And how poor, like, people puked on that workout. Like,
Oh, yeah.
which was hilarious. You know, when you're in a CrossFit gym, it's hilarious then. But, you know, when you're outside of that, you want to kind of find where they really, like their bottom, like where their baseline truly is. And yeah, I've seen people who've had similar stuff where it's like, how'd you do that? And even if, because sometimes my athletes have stuff like that, you know, but anyone who lifts consistently here comes back from their stuff faster than,
Yes.
Yeah.
like someone could. And the last one I had heard, and I was like, the last I saw of him too, was, I mean, he didn't last very long. It was like maybe a couple of weeks, but he injured himself lifting one of his boxes at Costco. And that was it. He was like, I'm just not supposed to lift. That was like his attitude towards it. And you know, my energy was like, no, that means you are, you know, that's almost like you had a heart attack and you need to stop smoking. Like that's the level I think of it at, versus they're like, oh no, physical activity, you know, you just avoid it, stay comfortable. And some of it comes from like, that is a generational thing, because maybe Gen X and Boomer, they think of the body as like this you know, wearing down battery. So like the more activity you do, just speeds up the wear down, you know.
You only have so
like
many heartbeats, Jarrell. And when you use them all, you're done.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like the philosophy. So, that is a generational thing, because I don't get that from like the younger groups. But yeah, for sure, I've seen minor activity end up in major injury, and that's all related to like their strength and, I would say, GPP, like their work capacity being incredibly low.
Yeah.
Testing VO2 max on all incoming clients for the last 8 years. I'm shocked at how low it is in some people. And they are too. They're like, oh, so this would explain why I always feel like dog shit all the time. I can't recover from anything and I'm tired and I just feel spent by the end of the day. I'm like, yeah, your VO2 max is 21. Like, this may not be completely accurate, but it's horrible. And then the good part is, you know, just doing more aerobic stuff for 4 to 6 months. I mean, they're not, you know, elite levels by any means, but just getting out of that just absolute bottom barrel, you know, bottom 5-10%. Every single one of them is like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Oh, all that horrible training I was doing, this is actually paying off. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, and you got to keep after it, right? Because that's the thing. At least minimally, like, you break some new ground, but you got to do something, or then that's going to go away. And I'm sorry if that. It's the same thing with dieting. You talk to all these, and I don't know if the younger generation is as much like this. It's hard to tell for me if it's generational, but like they want to diet real hard, basically cut calories is what average people think, and then go back to their old ways and I paid my dues. I suffered. I want my new low body weight forever. It's like, but now you're back on the cheese puffs, honey, you know? And so that's, your body is constantly just reflecting your environment. So and again, that's because I guess I went to school in physiology, and that's the idea. It's the function. It's the flux of everything. And you can't, but you're right. Average people don't think like that, I don't think.
Well, it's also, sadly, like I won't say who it is. I had an older woman that like asked for help, and she basically didn't want to do anything. And that's because 25 years ago, I spent 5 years teaching aerobics. I paid my dues. I shouldn't have to do this now. And it's like that debt is never paid for. Like, it's never paid for. You always have to do something physical. Just because you were a specimen in your 20s, like, doesn't mean you're done. Doesn't mean you can just quit. Or you're going to go down a spiral you don't want to go down. Now, the time invested can be much smaller, like we talked about, just to maintain. But you have to always do something. And I see it in powerlifters all the time, with Mike talking about, like, VO2 max stuff. There are people in that end of the strength spectrum that take things too far. And, like, they get so, like, you're strong, but you're so out of shape, you can't do a training session. Like, if coming in and squatting with me and doing 5 sets of 3 wrecks you, like, I could see that, okay, we're done doing heavy, but if you're just from 15 reps, you've got issues other than strength that you need to address. Like, you need to be in shape enough to finish a fucking training session. Like the fat powerlifter, long term, getting to the point where walking up a flight of stairs jacks you up. You can't live there that long.
No.
And that's like me when I do I ate up for that record breakers meet and I made it 292. But the minute I was done, it's like, okay, I got to fix this. I created a new weakness by getting that big.
Yeah, you do.
That out of shape. And it's like that long term, I'm smart enough to know that's trouble. And the blood test showed that that's trouble.
Oh, yeah. It's like those studies that talk about like VO2 max is one of the strongest predictors of longevity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like you have to have some aerobic capacity.
Yes.
Because, even when I was younger, I would do that. I know I'm not a big person, but when I was up over 2.25 in body weight, I'm only 5'9", and so everything was like sets. I was doing sets of 3 to 5 with like 8 minutes rest in between. And at some point, I'm like, I'm literally like dysfunctional. I don't have any capacity at all, So you got to rebuild that. You have to. And like you said, that debt is never paid. That's not permanent money in the bank because you were once aerobically fit.
Yeah. And it's no different than the people who, like, I've had people that hit their first 405 squat and it's like, and then they think that's mine for life.
Yeah.
No, that's not yours. The minute you back off, it's gone.
True. That's true.
Just because you've done it once doesn't mean you can do it again.
And they'll do it too. Like, what's your squat? 405. No, it's not anymore. It's not. That was like 5 years ago. Yeah. Or even 1 year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a training client that I trained for a long time, and then they got back into the game and they were like, just use my old numbers. Your old numbers were in 2010.
It's going to break you.
You will die. We can't do that. So,
and you know what? Bring this just like back full circle to what you were saying, Phil, was like with your spine and structural integrity and all that kind of stuff. You got to maintain it for that too. That's one of my big drivers, is because I've inherited some really bad, osteoarthritis, and then I've been super abusive with, my little body here with putting probably too much weight on my back and all that kind of stuff. And do I regret it? No. But I am worried that with weakness, and I know Mike could speak to this, but without that strength and stability, I feel like my joint problems are just going to get that much worse. Mm-hmm. Like I can't just be lax and weak. Yeah. So I'm trying to maintain strength literally for like joint integrity, and so I can be fine. Do I walk around stiffly? Yeah, I do. But I think it would just be a frickin' train wreck if I didn't keep going to the gym.
Yep.
What I do with clients, even myself, is once you hit it, great. Okay, now how often can you hit it? Like I did that with the 135-inch replica. Okay, I hit it back in September, but it took me probably another 4.5 months where before I left, I even did this after I got back, out of just walking into the gym, 14 attempts, I made 13 of them picking it up. Right. So my goal is, can I make this like almost literally an everyday thing where this is my new floor. This isn't my max. This is the floor. And then I'll build up, from there to the next max.
Yeah. Right. You want to make sure it's not an outlier.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to take it and make it something that you can do every day. It's like, can I own that dumbbell no matter what the worst conditions are? Because I know that my max strength is above it, instead of, I hit it and then, okay, I'm never going to do it again. Well, you're going to regress backwards, which is fine if you don't want to keep that thing. But like Phil said, you can't expect that just because you hit it once, you're good to go now. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And it's folly to tell Phil or Jarrell or you, Mike, it's for your clients to be like, I squat 405. Whoa. No, you don't. You did once. Yeah.
You did that once when Saturn was in alignment with Jupiter. And, and that's where, like, I always had, like, meat maxes meant they mean something, but much less than, like, daily training maxes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was able to hit, I think I hit, like, 700 in deadlift, like, 7 times in a meet before I ever was able to do it in the gym. And, it's like, that. Okay, now I'm a 700-pound deadlifter. Like, just because I can do it when the stars are right once in the perfect environment when my endorphins are through the fucking roof, that's totally different than okay, I can walk in and hit that. So, but yeah. So, anyways,
good stuff.
Yep. Call it a day. I got to go train a bunch of K through 8-year-olds in football. So.
Oh, nice.
Herding cats all morning. Herding cats.
There you go.
Right. It's a whole new learning curve.
Yep. So. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
See you.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.